about you, Andrea? How's the internet holding up over where you are?
Just about. I can hear you, so all good.
Wonderful. Okay, well, that's good. Good to hear. So far, so good. Peter, how's it going?
Yeah, QR, as well as it could be expected. I had to comb my hair for the first time in a week this morning for this. So, yeah.
Well, I'm not going to make you stand up and prove you've got trousers on, but yeah, I won't say if you don't say. But
no, I'm going to be honest. It's business shorts.
Is there such a thing as business shorts? Right, you've got to be in the right business to get away with shorts, I think. But
yeah.
All right, guys. This morning we're going to be talking about what you guys have all been getting up to together. From what I understand, you've been working towards actually how you can help people with the business interruption loan. So particularly how small businesses can actually get their hands on the cash that they need to survive. And I mean, fundamentally, given the situation that we're in, how they can get that really, really quickly. As always, folks who are tuning into this on LinkedIn, and I'm seeing loads of comments already sort of streaming through in terms of where people are coming from. We've got people tuning in from sunny Yorkshire, which is not a sentence that I ever expect. As a Doncaster boy, I've never actually heard sunny Yorkshire ever used in a sentence together. But we've got people from Southwest London, over in Vienna, morning Natalia, over in South London, Pakistan. Lots of people tuning in to watch you guys this morning. So we better make this a fun one. As always, as we've got good guests on, if you guys have got any questions or any comments, throw them into LinkedIn and I'll pick them up as we go along. But why don't we talk a little bit about what you guys did? I mean, I think I'm going to get a lot of complaints if I start calling before Corona BC. But what were you guys doing before Corona then? Russell, tell us a little bit more about Kompany, and then we'll get into what you guys are all doing together.
Good morning, everybody. Kompany is a regulatory technology platform. We focus on the business verification, or what's also called the KYB, Know Your Business, everything around the companies worldwide and the people behind. It's all about anti-money laundering, and it's all about real time. It's all about ensuring that you have the right data so you can verify the companies. And we did this BC, and obviously now I think it's even more important because we're talking about massive volumes, but we're also seeing obviously that there's a lot of gaps, not just in the data, but also in the processes when it comes to verifying businesses.
Like you say, big problem way before this kicked off, but the importance of getting this right now is even more, isn't it? So, Peter, tell us a little bit more about Shieldpay.
Yes, hi everyone. Shieldpay very recently just turned 4 years old. We're based out of London. We're a regulated payment institution by the FCA, but also available in 26 other countries. And what we're attempting to do is essentially secure high-value transactions. We found a very nice niche for ourselves in the fact that the more traditional payment processes out there, PayPal, Adyen, Stripe, etc., are very much geared towards sort of high-frequency, low-value transactions within the e-commerce space. What you actually find is that the higher up the spectrum you go for high-value payments, the more problematic they are. Very manual, very paper-based, very expensive. So we took a very old-fashioned method of transacting in escrow and effectively democratized it. So anyone can create an escrow transaction without the need for a law firm to be involved in that. So we hold, process, validate both sides of the party, and then obviously securely process those funds out. And our world BC very much geared towards securing transactions on marketplaces. Some you'll know, so we're starting to work with a large number of players in that space, but also it's starting to become much more prevalent in law firms now. So we work with nearly 70 of them in the UK to process high-value transactions like M&A, commercial real estate, residential real estate, class action lawsuits, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's quite a diverse bit of technology.
Awesome, that's really good. And Andrea, what have you guys been up to at Swoop?
The line is super bad for me, but I think I'm gonna just give you a brief background on Swoop. So we source and save money for SMEs. So SMEs can come on Swoop in a couple of minutes. Our various data sources, from accounting to cloud accounting, and then we pull publicly available data, and then we match their profile and instantly access finance for them. So that's across loans, investments, grants. Then we look after their bills for them, also get them better deals on overheads like utilities. So the point of the platform is improving bottom line, improving cash flow for businesses, and then instantly matching them to the funding that's right for them. So while our platform was very useful for businesses BC, it's now imperative for businesses to be able to access the right funding at the right time, so whether that's C-bills or whether that's non-bank lending, or trying to improve their cash flow by getting savings across all of the bills that they have during this time.
Great. So I guess you touched on C-bills there. I mean, this is really the problem, right? I mean, most businesses in normal times are not great at managing cash flow. It's true, if truth be told. There is a inevitable bizarre piece of paper or a spreadsheet that people use to try and sort of manage their business. But obviously, in these times, it's getting even more difficult for people, given the controls that they usually have over the being able to go out there and show some hustle and try and increase the revenue side of things. But I mean, maybe if we start with your businesses first. I mean, how has everything with COVID-19 kind of impacting your businesses? Are you sort of finding it difficult to work from home remotely? Or, I mean, given you're all quite young companies, I imagine the processes that you've set up work for remote working from the get-go. Maybe if we start with you, Russell.
Yeah. Well, we've been in lockdown now. We're going into the 5th week here in Austria. But we're a digital business. We also have teams remotely. We have, the business development sales team in Singapore. We have teams in England, also in New York. So, we're already accustomed to the telework, or as they call it here in Austria, home office, right? Working from home. And we took the decision, of course, to move also our headquarters and everybody to the home office. And that only took pretty much 6 or 7 hours to get everything up and running at home. I made sure everybody had their VPN, everybody, was ready. And we went into routine pretty much the next day. Because we are a digital business, right? We're an IT company, or reg tech. We are a digital business. We're accustomed to it already. So I would say it was pretty smooth. But obviously, I think we have much more FaceTime, much more video calls than we ever had before. And but from the impact on the business, I think from the operations, we haven't really seen a large impact, right? Because we had the smooth transition. But what we are seeing is obviously that there's out in the market, there's different groups that are really struggling, right, to work from home. And sometimes it's just about getting the signature that's required for a sign off. It might just be, okay, how do we schedule a call? But there's people in 5 or 6 locations. Everybody's used to the meeting room with the one, video conference. But but I think what we have seen is that also in the financial industry, we always talk about digital. We always talk about, having new processes and optimizing the processes towards the customer. But I think it's also important to look at what is the process in the back office and how digital is the back office. And I think here we're seeing a lot of gaps.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If my experience is anything to go by with big organizations, then not very is probably the answer to that, given really where they are. And that's, I mean, it's sort of coming back to bite a lot of organizations, I guess, in terms of the investment, really. I guess from an SME's perspective, as you say, this is a worry, just being able to get processes completed. But I mean, Peter, what type of issues are you sort of seeing in the SME space right now? Is it just gaining access to capital, do you think, or do you think there's a sort of a broader set of issues that are kind of kicking in?
Yeah, I don't think it's not a one size fits all problem, and I think you've got a certain sphere of the SME industry that's being hugely affected just because of the type of industry that they're in. I mean, gyms, cafes, anything that required foot traffic is basically not revenues is probably the biggest factor in this. So yeah, I don't think it's a one size fits all problem, but I think there should be a universal set of information about excuse me, set of information about how to be dealing with this. Most people are working off word of mouth a bit. Those who aren't really plugged in as much as others to shows like this, for example, aren't getting the type of information in real time that they need. So yeah, I think it's more really honing down on the most vulnerable, and probably, I don't know how that would work, but servicing them first. I don't know how you say one company's in more trouble than another, but yeah, I think there's a proper void for certain industries that may not be around anymore if they still stay closed from the closing the doors point of view for the next six to 8 weeks, and that's why we were actually brought together in the first place, was actually looking, I think it might have been on 11FS, a certain chart that was sent around about the different verticals with the certain amount of cash reserves that they have left, and others are a lot more vulnerable than others, and that's actually why the 3 companies on this line and 2 others as part of a group that we have, that was the catalyst for how we all started talking to each other, because it looked pretty scary.
It does. I mean, I think it was an average of 27 days of cash flow runway the average business had across all of those different sectors. I think it was a JP Morgan Chase diagram, wasn't it, looking at sort of global SMEs. But I mean, so tell us a little bit more about that then, because obviously there's sort of quite a lot of problems that are happening with the CBIL system now in terms of even gaining access to talk to somebody about distribution of funds, let alone actually distributing the funds in the first place. So, I mean, what are those issues that you're sort of seeing with that system? And then let's talk a little bit about why you guys all got together and how it sort of happened. So, what do you sort of see the issues with the CBIL system then, Andrew?
So the issue is, this isn't a bank bashing exercise. This is a case of the reality of suddenly a new product needed to be launched and distributed within the market during a time when banks themselves have capacity issues. They're not immune from COVID-19. So they've lost a lot of their customer support teams. They've had to retrain others to actually look at processing. So we've got an issue here of triaging. We've got an issue from the business owner's perspective of, where do I go for this? I've heard the announcement, can't get anyone at the bank to talk to. Do I apply there first? What are the eligibility criteria? So you've got confusion on the business owner's side in terms of, what do I need? Am I eligible? What information, etc. And then you've got issues on the actual processing and distribution side of things. So it's a case of, this is the reality of what life is like. It's all come upon us pretty suddenly. But what we can do and how we came together was, from the Swoop perspective, we're able to triage every single company within minutes and match them to the right lender. Because we're integrated with the CMA, the 9 major banks and other lenders, because that's our business as usual, we can match them to the right ones and make sure that they're ready, that they have all the information, that they are eligible, and not wasting their time if they're not. So we come into the fold in terms of triaging and assisting both the banks and the businesses to actually get there faster. And then we teamed up together because actually collectively we can actually solve the problem of not just triaging and matching, but also looking after the AML side of things, because this does have major AML requirements, and then distribution of funds, making sure that those funds are secure and verified, and then post-funding, continuing the monitoring, because future triaging is going to be required. Future injections of different schemes are going to be required. The point here is we're trying to save businesses and make sure that they don't go into default. So we don't need a one-off intervention. There will be other interventions that businesses need. And so there's a compliance and post-funding maintenance aspect that we think is required as well. So collectively we can solve the problem. We are speaking with a number of the banks, speaking with government, etc. But yeah, maybe the guys want to jump in also. But it was Chris Adelstack who put us all together. He knew us all individually, and I think he had pretty good foresight in that. So we have an awesome group that gets together every morning to talk about how we're making progress with the different stakeholders.
Excellent. I mean, I always, for anybody who knows 11FS, I always refer to the Avengers model. You know, if there's a big enough, bad enough problem, you get a group of superstars together, right? And it looks like this is what you guys have done. You know, the inability of the banks to kind of process these things and get the process working effectively. You guys being able to act as that triage to kind of give them a nice, neat solution to it. I mean, Peter, Russell, what's the reaction been to the big banks that you've sort of talked to?
Yeah, maybe if I can go and give you a little bit of insight. I mean, what we're seeing right now is that there's really a need that the SMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises, need to be serviced at the speed of business, right? So they don't have now 6 weeks to wait for a decision, for a back-end system, or maybe a manual processing. And I think also highlighting what Andrea said and what Peter said is it's really about what's the information, where do I stand? These are really the backbone of our economy. Those are the small and medium-sized enterprise, mainly the small, obviously, right? So when we have a crisis, we cannot wait 6 weeks. So we need to make sure we can service the clients, the SMEs, the requests at the speed of business, as I call it. And if we're looking at the processes that are, excuse me, that are needed, right, in order to say, okay, this information, yes, you qualify. This is what we need to do from an anti-money laundering perspective, and this is, you know, you can get paid out almost instantly. Then this is really what small businesses need. And when we look at the team that we put together and the consortium that we put together, this is possible today. Right? It's not something that needs to be built. It's not something that has to be designed. It's off the shelf, commercially available, off the shelf, or I think in the UK it's called oven baked, right? Oven ready, sorry, not oven baked, oven ready. And I think it's also important that we're seeing, you know, $5 trillion, euros, pounds, whichever, going into the market, flooding the market to stabilize the economy. And that's really opening the door also to fraud, right? To illicit funds being moved around, etc. And I think it's also important that we see the FCA, we see the EBA in Europe, we also see the FinCEN or Treasury in the US, clearly saying anti-money laundering processes have to be upheld. AML matters. And yeah, with anti-money laundering, if it matters, is like, okay, how do you make sure that you can conduct that in the most efficient way to service the economy, service the small and medium-sized enterprises quickly?
And that seems like a real problem, doesn't it? I mean, at the beginning of this, the 300, what was it, 300 million, 300 billion, 300 billion was being put into the yeah, but so put into from a stimulus perspective, just to keep people employed at this stage. And actually, to your point, the distribution of that looks like somewhere between nobody's getting any to throwing it in fistfuls out into the air on the streets, doesn't it? So, you know, being in a situation where there is consistency for these big organizations is so important to them through this period, because I mean, if the last crisis really sort of showed us anything, it was how people treat people in this period of time that makes their reputation for the next 20 to 30 years, doesn't it? So I think these guys kind of really need as much help with this as they can. I mean, what sort of issues are you sort of bumping into then in terms of barriers of facing to sort of get this together? As you say, from a technology perspective, you know, you three of being able to put this process together, put this setup together because of the technology and the cultures that you've kind of got. But are you seeing sort of resistance, I guess, from the big organizations in terms of working on this? Or and I guess to sort of follow that up is, how can anybody watching this now help you guys sort of further this cause?
Well, we actually, so when we've spoken to a large number of folks, and I think what was great about the morning calls that we were having is that in real time, for different sections of the problem, we were actually getting real-time information back. So what the issue is actually compartmentalized into two main issues. One was the number of loans that are being issued, and secondly was how fast those loans were getting out the door. So we actually kind of separated the problem into two parts. And from the issuance of loans, I mean, the statistics are pretty scary. I think they've improved slightly in the last 3 or 4 days, but only 1.4% of applications were actually becoming successful. And then you can say, well, there was a 2,000% spike in number of applications, but the actual lenders, their capacity to do those loans had been significantly reduced by the issues of COVID. One particular tier one bank's business continuity plan included an overseas hub in India, which wasn't allowed back into the office again. And so from a business continuity point of view, having a worldwide pandemic is probably as bad as it gets. So it's not one silver bullet to this problem. And I think the reason why the 3 companies on this call and a few others in the consortium that we have is that, none of our companies on our own can do this. It's much more like Shieldpay's, towards the end of this process. If someone, and we work through with Swoop and Kompany, and that if we have a batch of approved loans, we can do all of the validation on the anti-money laundering KYC. Effectively, we can batch transfer that via Kompany into us as approved, and then they can get out the door within 24 hours. Essentially, those were the 2 bits that Treasury were struggling. One was getting more loans issued. The other one was getting them into the hands of the people who needed them. It was a really interesting couple of weeks just hearing all this happening. But it feels like we've made significant progress, especially in the last 3 or 4 days.
Well, and it feels, in these times, actually seeing the Bank of England, seeing the FCA working very closely with organizations, traditionally, they sort of stood back a little bit more to sort of watch what happened and then comment later down the line. But actually, we're seeing the Bank of England and the FCA actually working. Anybody who can help, they seem to be very open to having conversations. So has the response from those guys been what you would have wanted it to be to sort of advance this?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more activity coming from regulators, the banking in implementation entity, the CMA. I don't think it's an element of resistance. I think it's just pure bandwidth. I think that HMT had to focus first of all on what the scheme were, making the announcements, making sure that all sectors were covered from charity through to self-employed, etc. So I think we're through the first phase of announcements and figuring out what the schemes were going to be. I think now that there's an element of we have a plan in that area, now it's they will have the bandwidth to look at how we think about every single aspect of how we can speed up distribution. So, we have another call this afternoon with government dealing with digital and tech policy to actually further this discussion. So I think it's more around bandwidth. And I hope that this government understands that, the UK has a leading fintech sector. We have the largest alternative finance sector outside of the US. This wasn't the case in 2008. So I think learnings are, we now have this unbelievable piece of armory that the UK could be leading in terms of the speed of distribution of funds to SMEs. So I'm hopeful for this next phase of implementation. They will have bandwidth to talk to businesses like our team.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, we've got this great advantage then, make sure we're using it. A couple of questions over on LinkedIn. So Chris Adell's back. Sorry, Chris, if I'm murdering your name there. How are the banks vulnerable and how can they help? Now, Chris sort of went on to pretty much answer his own question by sort of saying, surprisingly, the banks lack the critical banking infrastructure to quickly triage, underwrite and distribute funds at scale. It's not about just adding more money to the scheme. It's about critical piping and distribution. I mean, probably following that on, a conversation there from David Kolob, how do you see business payments evolving post-crisis? Because obviously, everything that you guys are talking about here are things that banks could have done ahead of time. But do you think there'll be a sort of a collective wisdom that actually they need to be building for this type of event going forward? Therefore, these types of processes just should be day in, day out automation of all these processes. Russell, what do you think? How will this affect the post-crisis payments rails systems?
Well, I'll take a bet that there's going to be two groups, right? One that will learn and say, oh, we really have to ramp up how we service our customers. It's not just about, technology and implementing. It's about how do we service our customers. And today, in this crisis, the customers are the small and medium-sized enterprises, right? And then we'll see that group will say, okay, how do we deploy technology in the most efficient manner to be not just effective in the market, but that we can service our customers better. Despite, if there is a crisis, we're here. If there's no crisis, we can service our customers really quickly. And then I think there will be also a group that will resign and say we cannot keep up, or we will not be able to implement the technology as needed because maybe we don't have the ability to. And I think you already see this in the US right now, because you have some financial institutions that are complaining that the anti-money laundering requirements are too strict. So saying, let's ease the requirements so we don't have to fulfill the requirements, and then we'll just process it. Obviously, that is really looking at it from the wrong angle, right? Because today we're talking about taxpayer money. We're talking about something that's vital for stabilizing the economy. So you cannot say that the regulation is the problem. The problem really is that the measures, the technology, the processes are not put in place that are required, right? Mm-hmm. And post the crisis, and I hope that's very, very soon, right? I think that we'll have those groups working much closer together with companies like ours, right? Saying, okay, look, you have the tech, help us service our clients better. Oh, there's the anti-money laundering requirements that's going to become more strict. Oh, how do we make sure that we actually automate that? Because if you look at it today, only about 5% of the financial institutions have fully automated systems for business KYC. 5%. And it's really a game changer. Deploy technology in order to service your customers better, and you'll have a competitive advantage. And I think post-crisis that the decisions on are we going to embrace technology to service customers better, or are we going to resign, might actually be a much quicker decision now than without the crisis.
I completely agree with that. I think many of the players will have to, the things you guys have been saying for the last 4, 5, 6 years, I think people are really, really, really going to believe it now. Not only is this stuff possible, but actually it's necessary. Digital is not optional anymore. It's mandatory, isn't it, in terms of actually how they run their business and what they provide to their customers. So I think if there's any silver lining to everything that's happening with COVID and Corona, is I think people will start really believing all the stuff that the community has been saying for a really long period of time. Unfortunately, guys, we're sort of hitting the top of the hour, and we've sort of run out of time. But maybe on one last thing then, Peter, if anybody wants to get involved or can offer any help to you guys in the sort of mission that you're doing, how do they sort of get in touch, and what else sort of are you looking for to kind of complete out the process that you're going through?
Yeah, so well, I mean, there's obviously a collective. We don't have a combined website or anything like that. We've just been working in our little pockets. But I mean, just from my point of view, anyone can email me anytime. Email is pjanes@shieldpay.com. There's obviously a few folks associated with this. Chris Adelsbach, who you mentioned, probably invested in half of the UK fintechs. So yeah, he's obviously a keen link up man for all of this. I think what we're trying to get most out of anything is just a plan. And then because effectively we know we've got a solution that can work, and it's more just trying to understand how individually the lenders are going about this process and how we can, it's basically insert ourselves in the middle of this to help them do their jobs. I mean, I don't think there's anyone's pointing fingers at the moment, really, just based off of what's happening in the world. But instead of pointing fingers, it's getting this technology in front of people who can make the decisions and make those decisions quickly. What has been a little bit alarming is the speed of decision making, I think, on all of this. It was great that 330 billion pounds was put into the system. Everyone high-fived, and then it was like, well, now what? So yeah, I think there's just everyone needs transparency, everyone needs decision making on this, and then we can act accordingly. There's some very clever people out there with some very clever tech. We just need to know where to deploy it.
Sounds good. I mean, I've always been brought up, don't just bring up problems, bring solutions. And I mean, you guys are pointing at where the problem is, but you've got the solution as well, which is a pretty good mix on that one. Unfortunately, it's top of the hour now, so I'm sure we've all got lives to go and get on with. But thank you so much for joining me, guys. Andrea, where can people learn more about you and Swoop?
Funding.com. You can come and register, and we can help you through the skills navigation. And I'm at Andrea@swoopfunding.com.
Very good. Russell, where can people find out more about you and Kompany?
Well, just visit us on Kompany.com. That's company with a K. And of course, on LinkedIn, Russell Perry and Kompany, or send me an email at russell.perry@kompany.com. Looking forward.
Very good. Yeah, well, I mean, off the back of this, I'm sure with the good work that you guys have been doing, there'll be a lot of people getting in touch. Peter, do you want to just throw up your contact details again? So if anybody needs to get in touch, then with you or Shieldpay, they know where to come.
Yeah, sure. So website is shieldpay.com. My email address, pjanes, JANES @shieldpay.com. Happy to help.
Fantastic. I mean, another great example, folks, of the fintech community coming together and building something that really solves a problem. I mean, in these times where there's so many different issues happening from a personal perspective, people really putting themselves out there with the thing that they do amazingly well to solve real problems for the community. So well done, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in. Tomorrow, guys, we've got Eduardo Volta, who is the head of fintech over at MasterCard, coming in talking about what they're doing. I say coming in metaphorically rather than literally, obviously, given everything that's happening with social distancing there. But if there's anybody else you'd like to see on the show, tag them in the comments, let us know. But until tomorrow, have a great day, guys. Stay safe, and speak to you tomorrow. Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.